All right, guys, welcome into this week's edition of the State of the Program. My name is Gerry Hamilton, joined by CJ Vogel, Rod Babers, proud UT graduates. Rod, CJ, portal's open. Of course, Nico Madness started before Portal Madness, but we've seen Texas get Emmett Mosley already out of the portal, right? So we know one wide receiver spot is taken care of. We don't know if there'll be a second wide receiver spot. We'll have to see on that. Right now, I think Texas is probably good with one, depending on who jumps to the portal. But now let's talk about the needs for Texas and you guys' opinions. Rod, we'll start with you. What are a couple of key needs you see in the portal as portal madness gets going, as Texas waits on guys they're going to be interested in to put their name in the portal?
I'll start with Sark's words himself, right? When Sark was asked about, positions that he's going to be looking at in terms of talent acquisition via the portal, he brought up wide receiver, and we saw Texas bring in Emmett Mosley. And, that's no surprise. I think something that CJ even talked about for weeks leading up to that Texas needs to do something. And Texas has a really successful track record recently of maximizing wide receiver talents in the portal. He also brought up D tackle, even though they have some guys who they brought in already. We seen last year they brought in 4 guys via the transfer portal in the D tackle room. They might do that again. Looks like they may look there. That's what Sark said. And also he brought up the tight end position, which is an interesting position because this spring, you got a lot of uncertainty, unproven commodities there. So at best, you're looking at uncertainty, unproven players, and at worst, you're talking about a potential problem area there at tight end because Texas just doesn't know what they have there. So those are 3 positions. But Sark also mentioned impact players. He just said impact players. He said those are positions where we obviously have scholarship numbers that we have to address. But he said he's looking for impact players and going after the DN, the edge defender from Stanford, when they already have an embarrassment of riches at edge, even though they did not, they weren't able to close that deal, just shows you that Sark saying, hey, man, we're just going after impact players. We see a guy that we believe can contribute and help us win right away. We're going after that dude. So that kind of leaves it wide open. That leaves it wide open, in my opinion, of somebody that could go after if it's the right fit.
Hey, CJ, before we get to a word for our sponsor of the State of the Program, Adam Lowy, I want you to do this. In order of specific position, what do you think's most important in the portal for Texas?
To me, it's tight end. It's tight end number 1 for me. Again, there's nothing that's been proven, right? A lot of promise. We like what we hear and we see, and developmentally know is going to be the course for Jordan Washington. We think Nick Townsend's going to be a big piece of that. We've heard good things about Amari Winston so far this spring. Of course, Spencer Shannon's been getting more looks with the first team than he's ever had in his career. Yeah. There's no guys there that's been out there and done that and blocked the defensive end with the caliber of a Colin Simmons or Colton Vosick or an Ethan Burke, right? It's just a complete unknown. Defensive line would come second. Of course, we've seen how important that is. Texas sending 3 guys to the draft in each of the last 3 drafts, 2 guys in the draft of the last 3 years. You got to have those big bodies in the SEC, right? That's just you have to. Texas has a solid group right now. I wouldn't say it's a complete lackluster position. It could certainly improve, but it's far behind what I think the dire need is of a tight end at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. Rod, anything to add as far as what positions you rank as far as the need for Texas?
No, I like the ranking that CJ had there. I think he's right about tight end, and then D tackle as well. I like that. Wide receiver is a position I think more for Texas. It's not a luxury position, but they do have proven commodities and depth at wide receiver. So bringing in another guy, I think that just kind of stabilizes that wide receiver position. And Texas jumped at an opportunity there, but I agree. I think tight end, D tackle, CJ's on the money there. I agree with him.
All right, and before we're going to do on the State of the Program, we're going to talk defense halfway through the spring coming up. But before we talk about those collisions, we're going to talk about Rod, a guy in Adam Lowy who can help you if you've been in a collision.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we'd like to thank Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm for their sponsorship of On Texas Football. And if you've been injured in a car wreck or truck automobile accident of any kind, from an 18-wheeler to an ATV, and think you might be due compensation, then you need to reach out to Adam Lowy at the LowyLawFirm.com. Adam and his group will give you a free, no strings attached consultation. Again, that's LowyLawFirm.com. So if you have any concerns about an accident you had and whether you need somebody fighting for you, that's what Adam Lowy and his team will do. And we want to thank them for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football.
Yeah, thank you to Adam Lowy and Lowy Law Firm for being a great sponsor of On Texas Football. All right, we're going to talk defense today. Midway through spring, a lot of it will be based on Sark's comments to the media Monday, which CJ Vogel, Jeff Howe were at. Let's start in the secondary. Rod, CJ, let's start with CJ. What were your takeaways from what Sark said about the secondary Monday? And then two, we'll lead into kind of Rod's thoughts on the secondary midway through the spring.
Well, it was certainly encouraging that a week ago he said that the cornerback room was probably the best looking physically position in the entire Texas football program. And I don't know if that was the expectation coming into the spring, but
not mine.
No. And so to hear that, of course, you move Jalen Gilbo out wide. You hope the second year of Kobe Black springs something in his development as well. We know Manny Muhammad's going to be a solid piece for you, but to hear about Warren Roberson, who we mentioned on Monday, to hear about a guy like Santana Wilson and now a Cade Phillips, who are all emerging, all of these guys are going to find the field, whether it be in special teams, whether it be rotationally. They're going to have some role, whether it be kickoff return, gunner on punt, but that right now is really encouraging. And then in the back end, look, if your second guys are Jordan Johnson, Rubel, and Xavier Phil-Smith, there's a lot of football IQ with Rubel, and there's a lot of athleticism and speed with Phil-Smith. You can mix and match where you want to utilize these guys. And the forgotten piece in all of this is, well, it's the emergence of Wardell Mack at the nickel spot. So I like what I'm hearing about this secondary so far. I've heard there haven't been too many busts in coverage. Of course, a lot of brand new faces, a lot of first-team reps for a lot of guys. And your main communicators, Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makubu, played a large part of that, off to the NFL. So to me, it's all about how can Michael Taff, who is the senior veteran guy, be the focal point and that mouthpiece for the entire secondary. So far, it's sounding like it's going pretty well.
Rod, you've been part of 4-star and 5-star heaven over in Austin before in the secondary. So what are your thoughts? Because that's what it is. Everybody we're talking about is a 4-star or 5-star ranked player coming out of high school.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And now you got the same guy, one of the godfathers of DBU. They coached me there, Coach Aquina. And one thing I know about Coach Aquina, which I think is going to be really good for these guys in terms of the competition level and guys seeing a pack to play, he wants to get his best 5 DBs on the field. And I think now, just kind of looking at it and hearing about those young cornerbacks that are stepping up, hearing about, a young Santana Wilson and Warren Roberson, and hearing about, Kobe Black. So now they have options. We know Gilbo is also working at that corner spot, and he can be a starting nickel, could end up being a starting corner for you. What is promising to me is coming out of spring, there are options for you. I don't know if they're going to find the actual solution opposite Malik Muhammad this spring, but it looks like they're going to have options. They're going to have contingency plans. It could be Gilbo. I think it'll work out like this. You know if you're going to put your best 5 out there, you know who your starters are now. Taft is a starter, right? That's an All-American comeback for you. Malik Muhammad's a starter. I think Gilbo's a starter. I would say even Jelani McDonald right now feels like he's going to be a starter to me. Right. It just feels, I don't know where, but it just feels like that. Derek Williams is another guy that, when he comes back from injury, not obviously this spring, that he's a guy I think kind of you throw in that starter conversation as well. So I think right now, looking at looking at Gilbo, looking at Taft, looking at Malik Muhammad, Jelani McDonald, let's just say those are your 4 starters. So if one of those young corners, and this is the week that Sark says, hey, man, all the install is in. You got the install. Who now can retain it and who now can still play at a really high and fast level with now all of, the install in and knowing the scheme and knowing the alignment, knowing your technique and your fundamentals. So if one of those corners steps up, then great. Then, Gilbo can move back in the nickel and you got your 5 starters right there, depending on who that corner is. If one of those corners doesn't step up this spring, let's say it's one of those, those safeties. Say one of those young safeties has kind of proven himself. You're like, man, I believe we got a starter caliber guy in one of these young safeties. Then that's great because it looks like a guy like Gilbo can move out to corner, and you can move Jelani McDonald, maybe move him back down to nickel. Best case scenario is you see a potential starter at corner and another guy steps up. Maybe that's Wardell Mack at nickel, who says, hey, man, you know what? He's earned our trust. I think that guy can end up being a starting caliber player for you. And then you can either keep him at nickel and then move Gilbo out to corner and still be solid. So I think right now you got 4 starters in my mind. You're looking for that 5th starter. So they're cultivating nickel to see if they can find one there. They know they got 3-4 guys at corner that are really fighting it out opposite Malik Muhammad. And we'll have to see how when it dust settles this spring, what position ends up stepping up, because that'll ultimately determine where Gilbo ends up landing, in my opinion, and where Jelani McDonald ends up landing.
Hey, Rod, the last thing on the secondary I wanted to ask you. So PK's always been a low blitz rate guy, played a lot. Y'all know the numbers, played more zone than man traditionally, I believe.
Yeah.
What happens? What type of transition is that if Johnny Nansen, Dwayne Akina, Mark Orfe bring a little more man to kind of this scheme? Talk about that transition and how to make that all work, because on some level, that's going to be, to me, it's not about the talent. It's about almost fitting all that within what PK's comfortable with in his scheme.
Yep. I think the first step, and I think they did it last year, they played more single high than they played 2 high. Last was the first time on record that I have it in PK. I think that was a Johnny Nansen influence. And with all these guys coming in, Coach Dwayne Akina, Mark Orfe, these are guys that come from man, basically teams that utilize a lot of man coverage. At Arizona with Coach Akina and at Rutgers with Mark Orfe. So I think they'll slow it. Last year they were between 15 and 20% man coverage. I think they'll sprinkle in and be like 25% man coverage this year, like a quarter of their coverages. Sark said the bodies are looking good, like it's the best looking position. These are guys that look like they can play man. They're longer, rangier, got length, right? Got arm length and wingspan, and these guys can run, and they're recruiting coverage defenders, right? They're recruiting guys that can just straight up cover, and they have been for the last kind of 2 recruiting classes. So I think ultimately it won't look that much different. It won't be a drastic shift. It'll be something they gradually get to. By the time maybe in 2026, 2027, you see Texas playing a lot more man coverage, maybe a third of their coverage. The 35% could be man coverage. Right now, I'm predicting 25% man coverage rate, still with more single high looks, because that allows you to be more exotic with that extra defender and do some of the things that I think PK and Johnny Nansen want to do. And I don't know if they'll blitz more. I don't think I'm with you. I don't think that's going to be it. Even when they play man, I don't think they'll blitz with that extra defender. I think you'll get most time either a whole player. You may get twists and stunts up front. You may get some simulated pressures, but I don't see the blitz rate increasing that much, even when you're playing more man-to-man. I think they'll give help to the man-to-man defenders, either a player or a role player, or both.
And that's a level of edge and prospects and pass rush specialist prospects Texas has recruited. They don't have to bring, unless they have to bring the extra number, they won't bring it very often. CJ, one of the things Sark said, and I've been waiting to hear this name because we all think the guy's a really good player. Sark brought up Brad Spence for the first time Monday. And we had reported that he had kind of had a lingering injury issue after the season at Arkansas, so he missed some time in winter workouts. But Sark specifically brought up Brad Spence. What did he have to say about Spence? And guys, do y'all agree with me that this may be the most talented group of linebackers Texas has had in many years? I mean, it's depth and talent and size, man. They're everywhere.
Yeah, they are. And there's plenty of options for this Johnny Nansen PK defense to kind of deploy these guys, right? And it's going to be really, really interesting to follow how they do just that. Sarkisian came out and said it's the best version that they've seen of Brad Spence since he arrived. Of course, you mentioned that lingering injury. Get him back on the field 100%. Now you're able to see that size, right? He's running around at 240, Gerry, and there's plenty of linebackers in this room running around at 240 with ability to rush the edge. We've talked about Anthony Hill, 8 sacks a year ago. Trey Moore, 7.5, 8 sacks a year ago. Brad Spence now into that picture as well, 4.5 at Arkansas. It's going to be really interesting because you haven't seen a whole a lot of size in this room previously, right? We've known about Anthony Hill, but aside from that, you've mostly paired that up with a David Benda around 230. You've paired that up with a Ty Anthony Smith at times, a Leon Galafau, all in that 225 range. Now you're able to mix and match. And we heard Sarkisian a week ago mention, moving Trey Moore to the second level has caused all sorts of identification issues for the offensive line. I can only imagine what those identification issues might be for an opposing offensive line who had a week to prepare for not just Anthony Hill, but Brad Spence and possibly Trey Moore as well, while dealing with a Colin Simmons on one end and an Ethan Burke or Colton Vasek or a Zeno Umeozulu on the opposite end, right? There's so many different options that they can mix and match to create pressure organically without having to take somebody out of its back seven, right? So I think that's going to be really interesting. And, it's a game of chess. When you get in these pre-snap formations and alignments, Texas can do just about anything. It's like they got 3 different queens on the field that they can move around and blitz from any angle.
Yeah, so Rod, I was going to follow up with a question on that. What does this exactly bring to the Texas defense? I mean, we know Anthony Hill going to be first-team All-American preseason, but Trey Moore at linebacker, Brad Spence at linebacker, and obviously you can see some of those guys at the edge through the season, but how does that change things from what you've seen from Texas in recent years, just the talent level and versatility at linebacker?
I think you just hit it at the end there, Jerry. I think one of the last phases of evolution for this defense, right? I think ultimately when PK first got here, they wanted to be a defense that could stop the run. That was the number one thing, right? And that's the first thing they did as a defensive unit. Figured out how to stop the run. They did a good job of it, and they've been a good run defense ever since. And then they want to be better in critical moments, third downs, red zones, critical moments, situational defense. I think they got a lot better situationally too. The pass defense was kind of pressure was the next thing, right? And remember that year they were getting pressure in 2023, but it wasn't necessarily converting into sacks and splash play. But they were one of the highest pressure rates in the country, and they figured out, all right, we got to convert that. How do we convert that? We need different athletes to do that. Well, Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons, those types of athletes, and then convert that pressure not only into sacks, but splash plays, turnovers. So that now they got last year pressure converted into turnovers, turned into sacks. I need a last phase. I think they got 2 of them. More man coverage. Remember last year, they between 15, 20%. The best defenses in college football are able to play man coverage, right? Because when you see a Cade Klubnik and when you play against a Will Howard, Sam Levitt, better quarterbacks, if you're just playing pattern match coverage the whole damn game and you don't blitz very often and don't play man, it just makes it easier for them. After all, just making it easy to get. So you need to throw more variety at these quarterbacks at the higher levels when they go deep into the playoffs. That's more man coverage, right? And then I think ultimately the last phase after they get to man coverage, but now they're sprinkling it in, versatility, multiplicity, as I like to call it. You want multiple players on multiple levels of your defense that you can move around, movable chess pieces. And how many are there now? Like 4 or 5. You got Jelani McDowell in the secondary. They got multiple guys cross-training in the secondary. Jadae Barron did it. Look at the linebacker, Anthony Hill. This guy's got a 30% pressure rate at the linebacker spot, guys. All right. Analytically, he's your best pass rusher with 8 sacks. So you can move that guy around the edge. They're doing it with Trey Moore purposefully, right? Brad Spence is another guy. Then I think some of the edges they're recruiting now, look at Lance Jackson and look at some of these freaks they're getting. These guys can play multiple shades up front. So they don't get to the point where getting to what CJ said, it's going to be hard for a quarterback to line up and identify where a lot of these crucial pieces are for defense. Is Jelani McDowell playing nickel? Is he playing safety? Are they in 3? Is it a 3 high end? Are they playing 3 safety? Like what? You know what I mean? Oh man, look at Anthony Hill. He's playing an off-ball linebacker. No, Trey Moore's playing the linebacker. No, it's Anthony Hill on the edge. Like by the time you figure it all out, you're discombobulated, disoriented, and already Texas is on the advantageous side of things even before the ball is snapped. I think that's what they want to do more of.
That was an ad for Tylenol for OCs playing Texas is what that was. All right. So we're going to end this week's state of the program on the interior of defensive line, because we've talked edge a little bit here. But CJ, Cole Brevard and Hero Kanu got their kind of first mentions from Sark Monday. Obviously, we reported other people have as well. Travis Shaw, I think Sark said, has been limited a little bit with the knee. So they're kind of limiting him the way they limited Jermaine Lole last year in fall camp, right? Even though this is spring. But what did Sark have to say about those guys, and where are we at on the interior to Texas defensive line? Because they will take 1 or 2 guys out of the portal, assuming the guys, the talent level they need or desire as a disruptive 3 actually enter the portal.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads the way when talking about the defensive line. Sarkisian came out and said, hey, we're still looking there, right? Even after a few portal additions, we're in that same boat where we got to rebuild and keep these bodies coming in out of the portal. Texas has done it really for 2 straight years where they've had to supplement, if not completely rechange and rebuild that defensive line room. 2025 is going to be no different, especially here in the spring. But positives around, right? Cole Brevard, I think we figure, is going to be one of your main rotational pieces, right? Whether or not he starts, we'll see what happens. If I had to guess what would be the starting lineup right now, it'd be Alex January, it'd be Cole Brevard as your nose, as your 3 tech, and then we'll see what happens with Hero Kanu. But that's a real positive to hear Sarkisian mention Kanu, because a guy that didn't play a whole lot at Ohio State, a guy that wasn't real privy to the sport of football before entering Ohio State. So to hear he's coming along at north of 300 pounds, that's a great sign there as well. And then Travis Shaw, he's dinged up now, but a guy that can play over the nose, a former 5-star with that first step, who really, really is impressive at that size. What do they do to supplement that? Is it a Melvin Hills? Is it a Myron Charles? Is it a Josiah Sharma? We'll have to wait and see. All in all, Texas still likes to go 3 down with 3 big men at times. Who is that going to be at the moment? It's Kanu, it's Brevard, it's January. One of those guys goes down, you still got to limit to Travis Shaw. Well, then you're putting a lot on plate of a young defensive lineman going out and getting a few guys, if possible, I think would be key for this team.
Rod, I've been on record as predicting Texas will be better against the run on the interior. And call me crazy if you feel like I am, because people have before. But what are your thoughts on that? And what do you see as their need on the, is it that disruptive 3? Is that what they're really going to miss with Alfred Collins and Vernon being gone? Or is it the underrated play of Jermaine Lole and Bill Norton with the guys they already have? Because Cole Brevard's a mountain over the ball now.
Yeah, no, that's such a good mix, man. Last year, and I didn't think they would end up being that complimentary, right? Because Alfred Collins was great against the run. I mean, he was fantastic. I thought he'd end up being a better passer. It turns out that was Vernon Broughton, who they used on the NASCAR package. But both of those guys were fantastic against the run, resetting the line of scrimmage. Bill Norton could not be moved. I mean, just could not be moved inside. He could. And there wasn't a lot of time. And there are times where I think, CJ, you brought this up, that how many forced holding calls Bill Norton had? Some freaky crazy. Now, did you say like he led the D-line or something like that?
Yeah. Believe it or not, Bill Norton and Colin Simmons each led Texas with 3 holding calls a piece last year.
Yeah. I mean, that's disruptive. That means you're being disruptive. So it's going to be interesting. I want, number one, I'm with you. I think I would prioritize run stuffing disruptors if I was Texas, because I think you're going to be. We would love for guys to have the added value of being able to rush the passer, but I feel like I'm with you. I think if we keep Anthony Hill clean and LaFau clean, those guys will get to the football. They'll track the football. So I just need guys to be able to hold point and be guys who can just stop the run. I think if you can find those specific traits in the interior D-line, you'll be fine, because you have so many guys who are game wreckers on the outside and on the edges, and also a guy like Anthony Hill's considered a game wrecker as well. I think you'll find the plays, like you'll force the negative plays. That's what they want. I think you'll force them up for those. What I want from the D-line, I just need guys who are consistent and guys who can hold point and stop the run, because I think that, to me, is my biggest concern.
All right, guys, and that will be our last question here on this week's State of the Program. Again, I want to thank our sponsor, a great sponsor of On Texas Football. That's Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. Thanks once again for that. Thanks, CJ. Thanks, Rod. That's when this week's edition of the State of the Program. We'll have more Longhorn live stream tonight. Breaking news, we'll have that for you too. Go check out ontexasfootball.com, where everybody goes to make fun of CJ and I, and we love it. So come join in on the fun. All right, you guys have a great one.
Welcome.